Hello, everybody, and welcome to CELPIP Speaking Pro, Target 9 Plus. Today's lesson is lesson 3, and we will be focusing on speaking tasks 6 to 8 of the CELPIP test. I'll let you know quickly here before we get started that we keep the microphones in Zoom muted, but we are going to use the Zoom chat box area to communicate. So please, if you do have any questions today, kindly place them there in the Zoom chat, and we will answer as we go. I'd also advise that you keep an eye on your email inbox because after our session wraps up, say in the next 24 hours, we will be emailing you with a study pack of materials. And within that study pack, you're going to have access to so many different links that will open things like previously recorded version of the session. It'll take you to a survey. It'll help you access the 2 free practice tests online and so on. So again, keep an eye there on the email, and hopefully that study pack will arrive shortly. I'm going to quickly introduce myself, and then I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about yourself as well as we get started here. So I'm Brandy. I'm an online instructor for the CELPIP test. I have been teaching for CELPIP for more than 6 years now, but I've been teaching in total for a good number of years, more than 26 now, and counting. I was born and raised in Northern Ontario, but I currently live in British Columbia on Canada's west coast. And I'm wondering about the rest of you. Let me know maybe where you live right now. Are we all focused in Canada? Maybe some of you are overseas. Let me know. I always like to hear from you. You'll see already that my colleague Simon has placed a hello and welcoming message in the Zoom chat. So that's where I would love as well for you to place your answers. So let's warm up a little bit here. Make sure you can hear me. Make sure that you know how to access the Zoom chat. Let me know, where are you from? And while I'm waiting for your answers to arrive, I'm going to continue on here and let you know that you can take CELPIP, of course, for Canadian immigration. You can also take it if you want to immigrate to Australia someday. So for those of you new to us, I wanted to make that announcement so you're aware. Here's what we're going to do together today in the next couple of hours. I am going to introduce the speaking test to you first. We will talk about how it is going to be scored. And then I'm going to jump in here to the 3 tasks we're focusing on, tasks 6, 7, and 8. For each of these questions, I'm going to present to you an actual CELPIP test question. We are going to talk a little bit together about how we might want to answer this question if it were our own. And then I'm going to play for you a recording of real test takers' answers. These are people who encountered that same question on their test in the past. And as we listen to their responses, it's our job to determine what these speakers are doing well and where they still need to improve. So we'll have a discussion using the Zoom chat area. And of course, I will reveal the score to you after we've had a chance to talk about it. You'll notice in tasks 6 and 7, you will have an opportunity to practice speaking yourselves. And this is another reason why we keep the microphones here muted. We don't want you to be shy. We want you to have the space to speak up and put these skills to good use that we're working on today. And then at the very, very end of this entire webinar, I will quickly run down some of our free study materials and also introduce you to the online bookstore. All right, so I'm returning now to my Zoom chat. And as I've been introducing the session to you, I see that some of you are indeed letting me know in the Zoom chat where you are currently residing from. So we have people in Trinidad and Tobago. Very cool. That's not a super common destination for me, Lydia. So I'm curious. I've never been there. But now you've got me thinking about what it might be like down there. Manitoba, okay, yep, Canada, and also Nigeria. So actually we're quite covered, quite spread out, I guess, around the world as well. All right, and some of you as well are saying that you're in BC, British Columbia, just like me. So wherever you are currently listening from, we hope that you've settled in and are ready to get to work today. We do have a lot to cover, so let's jump right in here now. There are 8 speaking tasks, as you can see here on the chart, and I've marked them with lessons. Today, I mentioned we're doing lesson 3, which is at the bottom, tasks 6, 7, and 8. If you missed our live lessons 1 and 2, you can watch the previously recorded versions of those sessions. We keep all of our recordings hosted on our YouTube channel. Or you can always register for the next upcoming live sessions. We do deliver these sessions once a month. Also, in the preparation time, you're going to notice that most of the time on the speaking test, you will have 30 seconds to read your question and start thinking about your ideas. But in 2 cases, In tasks 5 and 6, you'll be given a full minute. And since we're starting with task 6 today, you'll see that right away. The recording time as well usually asks you to speak up for 60 seconds of time, but there are 2 tasks, numbers 1 and 7, that will require you to speak for 90 seconds. So we certainly want to have more details prepared to cover that time. And all said and done, when you do the math and add up your prep time and your recording time, you'll see that you've got about 15 minutes to finish all 8 tasks on the CELPIP speaking test. And this part of your test, by the way, it's the very, very last part of the entire test. Okay, I'll show you a quick computer screen here of what a question could look like, or would look like, I should say, when you sit to write this test. So I want you to know that you'll always have your prep and recording time visible here in the top right corner. So that's where I would look first, regardless of which speaking task you're working on. This one just happens to be a speaking task too, as you can see. Your question will always be facing you as you speak. So I want you to imagine right now that you're sitting in the testing room. You will be wearing a headset throughout this entire test, and there will be a microphone attached to that headset. So when it comes time to speak, you're going to speak up and record your voice right into that microphone. And it's the recording you make that is going to be sent out later on to the rating team. They'll listen to the recording and they will give you a score based on what they hear you demonstrating skills-wise. So as I said, you'll be looking at the screen as you're speaking into the mic. So if you forget some of the details of the question, you can always quickly review. Now, although the prep time is showing in the top right corner, it's also going to be counting down in the middle of your screen as well. So when this preparation time clock reaches 0, you're going to hear an automated voice speak through your headset, and that voice will say, "Start speaking now," at which point the microphone turns on, and that's when you start delivering your response. You are going to notice a next button on just about every computer screen. And for the speaking test, I honestly don't think you'll need to use it. In the other parts of CELPIP, like the listening, the reading, the writing, if you do finish questions early, then it's fine. If you wanted to click next and just move yourself ahead to the next test part, that would be fine. But in speaking, as you can see, you have such a short amount of time to prepare and then to speak. So I can't foresee a reason to skip over some of these precious seconds or a question altogether. But do be aware that if you click next, you will be moving to the next part of the test. There is no back button, so you could never return back to finish up a question later on. You also do not get to carry with you the extra time on screen. So every single question on the entire CELPIP test, speaking included, is going to start with its own preset number of seconds. So that's something to be aware of. After you are asked to start speaking, you'll know your microphone is live and recording you, because this is precisely what you will see on the computer screen. The word recording tells you the microphone's working. And when you speak into the mic, that little gray bar is going to bounce gently up and down as it's doing now. So this is reassuring you that the mic is indeed registering your voice. That blue bar on the official test is actually going to move. I realize it's stationary right now in this screenshot, but on the real test and in all of our practice test materials, that blue bar is the timer, and it's actually going to move across the screen. And since this question is a 60-second question, it's going to take 60 seconds for that blue bar to reach the end of the white space. So just keep an eye. You're looking at this computer screen while you're talking. And when the blue bar is almost at the end, it's time to wrap up what you were talking about and offer a conclusion. Okay, let's quickly talk about how this test is going to be scored, and then we'll jump into some practice. So the recordings you make, I mentioned, they'll be sent out to a rating team anonymously. They're going to be listening to your speaking responses, and they're hoping you're going to demonstrate as many strengths as you can in these 4 key areas. We call them dimensions, and they're listed here on the left of the screen. So the content and coherence comes first, and this really speaks to how well you are organizing and developing your ideas. So for every single main point you deliver in the response, we're hoping you've got some examples and some supporting details to back that up. That's going to help your score. The vocabulary section right below that speaks to how wide the range of words you know how to use properly can be demonstrated, and if you are using those words naturally. So again, make sure the words make sense. The meaning has to be clear, but we also want the words to be natural, hopefully specific and precise as well. Right below that is listenability. And this speaks to primarily your speech presentation skills. So your pronunciation, your intonation, your ability to move your speech forward without stopping and interrupting yourself or interjecting too frequently. These are all skills that, of course, we would need to work on regardless of what language we're communicating in. Within the listenability, your grammar and your sentence structure will also be evaluated. So the rating team giving you a score only has the recording to listen to. They will not have a transcript of your answer, but they can still tell just from listening whether you are using correct and accurate grammar. And they're hoping your sentences also demonstrate more complexity and that you showcase a good variety of structures. Right below that is task fulfillment. Last but not least, of course, you must follow all instructions for the question. That goes without saying. But your tone is also part of this score. So right away, you're going to want to decide if you're supposed to be using a formal or a casual tone. And then the length of your response factors in here. So remember how most of these questions ask for 60 seconds of talking time. 2 questions ask for 90 seconds. You do not have to be perfect, of course. We simply want you to use the time available to demonstrate as many strengths as you can. So if it's a 60-second question and you speak for 55 seconds and you give a very strong answer that demonstrates many of these factors we're looking for, well, then that's just fine. I don't want you to stress out about trying to be 60 seconds perfectly. That would be very tough for anyone. Okay, today's lesson, we call it Target 9+ because here on our CELPIP score chart, we are targeting level 9 and higher, possibly. So all the skills we're really going to push ourselves to work on together today in session. We want to demonstrate at least level 9 proficiency, and depending on how much you study at home and continue to develop these skills, we're hoping you can achieve perhaps even a higher score. Can I quickly ask in our Zoom chat area, what score are you aiming for today? Are all of you looking for level 9 to 12, somewhere in there? And if so, you're in the right place, is my point. This session is designed more for the intermediate to advanced speaker. If I've got some of you here today that are perhaps looking for a level 7 or a level 5, that's fine. I mean, obviously, you're welcome to stay, but please be advised that we are focusing today on level 9. All right. And I can see a few of you writing in right now indicating that you're looking for that intermediate to advanced level range. Okay, so I thought I'd clarify that. The score that you need, of course, is contingent on the purpose, the reason why you're taking CELPIP. So if you don't yet know what score you need, that's your next step. As soon as we finish today's webinar, I want you to go on to the proper websites and channels, government websites, immigration websites, etc. Please make sure that you know what score you need to achieve your goal. All right. Without further ado, oh, by the way, the responses I will share with you today from real test takers, I'll let you know right now that they've achieved either a level 8 or a 9. So we're really going to target that threshold. So by the end of today's session, I really hope you can see the difference between those two levels. We do have one level 12 response that we will also listen to together today. So you'll have something to compare it to anyway. So those of you looking for that level 9 as a minimum, here are the skills that you'll want to be working on at home and demonstrating well in the testing room. This is called a performance profile. And when you receive your score report from CELPIP, that would happen within 3 to 4 business days after taking the test. The score report is going to summarize the speaking skills that somebody speaking at that level should be able to demonstrate in general terms. So you'll notice that the details come first here in the performance profile. You'll notice that word complex. Complex is the name of the game for level 9 and higher. We're getting away from very common, undeveloped ideas, and we're starting to add specific examples and supporting details here to make the response interesting. That's a really strong marker of level 9 to level 12, frankly, ability. The grammar and sentence structure as well is also going to start showing more consistent complexity. Of course, there can be and will be simple sentences too, but by level 9, when we're intermediate level and we've been practicing a while, hopefully we have the capability to mix things up and demonstrate a really strong variety. If all we do is talk in short, simple sentences, that's fine as a starting point, but it's not demonstrating those intermediate capabilities. So you'll want to learn how to create a compound and a complex sentence in both speaking and writing, frankly, for this test. The vocabulary as well is mentioned, and once again, you'll notice specific, specific, precise, interesting word choices are also going to be markedly noticeable here for level 9 compared to level 8 and below. There likely will be some mistakes. In fact, all the way up to level 12, I think we could always find a mistake or two that needs to be fixed. The point is, nobody's looking for you to be perfect. But the mistakes that we make from level 9 and onwards are not going to have an impact on the listener's ability to understand the response. And that's really important. So there might be the odd little grammar mistake or word choice error. Perhaps there's one or two words that the pronunciation was a little bit weak, couldn't quite understand it. And that's fine, provided we are still demonstrating strengths across all other areas of that giant checklist that we've just talked about. Okay, so again, I'll say it one more time, just make sure we're all clear. Nobody expects you to be perfect on this test. Making mistakes is okay, as long as the mistakes do not impact understanding and that you are demonstrating, of course, strengths across as many areas as you can. So without further ado, let's jump right into speaking task 6, which is our starting point for today. This one is dealing with a difficult situation. Here is the question that we are actually going to workshop a little bit together, and then I'll play for you a real CELPIP test taker's answer. So I'll point out the timer one more time here, 60 seconds to think and read the question. As you can see, there's quite a bit to read here. And when it comes time to speak, you will be speaking for 60 seconds. And that is helpful to know now, so you can start planning the right amount of detail in the preparation time. So here's our situation. I'll maybe just read it aloud so we can all stay together for time here today. This one says, a customer comes into the store where you work. He wants to return a shirt that is ripped. Your coworker will not return the shirt because the customer has worn it. The customer is arguing that the shirt was of poor quality and should not have ripped so easily. Therefore, it should be returned. Okay, so it's a role play, as you can see. And I'm hoping that we've all understood we work in this store with another colleague. There's an angry customer that wants a refund on a ripped t-shirt. Hopefully you've understood that in reading it through just once, because you still need to come down here to the two options. It's an either or situation. You must select one of these two ideas to build your response around. You cannot support both of them. So in option number 1, you will be talking to your coworker. And since this question does not give you the name of your coworker, I would like you to make one up. That's an example of throwing in an interesting detail that will help with the content. So any old name that comes to your mind when you begin the response, you would start with that. So, hey, Amir, hey, Kevin, hey, Juliet, whatever the name is, that's fine. Use a name. I would summarize the situation first, so make it quite clear that we have an upset customer that would like a refund. If you select option 1 here, you must then tell your colleague why that shirt should be returned. So you're basically accepting the customer's demands. You will be accepting that t-shirt back. You will likely be issuing then the refund for the amount paid. Okay, so it's up to you in the 60 seconds of preparation time to come up with reasons why that would be the best solution. Can I open it up to you really quickly in the Zoom chat area? What's the very first reason you can think of why it would be wise to take this ripped t-shirt back and give the refund? Don't overthink it, but just come up with a realistic idea. Maybe this has happened to you where you've purchased something and you've been very upset about it and you would like a refund or a credit note or something. So what makes sense to you? And I've already got a few ideas coming in. Yeah, a lot of you are focused on the reputation of this clothing store and the brand name. And that leads into what Laura is saying here about the satisfaction of the client, and Benjamin as well, customer relationship. So I think every single answer that's come in, there's about 6 of them now, right? Really nicely done here. We're all suggesting that it's important to keep the customer happy so they will be loyal and return to do more business with us another day, which will hopefully bring in revenue. So that's sort of one idea. And then I would also attach that or extend that to say it would also support a stronger reputation for our company brand, which once again could attract word of mouth, right? Word of mouth advertisement. Friends will tell friends when they're happy or unhappy about a certain business. So that would be one avenue for sure. I think we could really squeeze about 2 ideas out. As I say, customer satisfaction and brand reputation. They kind of go together, but you could develop them separately. To fill 60 seconds of talking time, you might need a third reason. So you'd have to think quickly on your feet. Maybe you would just say maybe there is a warranty that says that the store will actually accept back defective merchandise. And we could argue, since the date on the receipt the customer is presenting shows that the shirt was literally just purchased last week, we'll say, then we should be issuing that return. Okay, so again, you can make these details up, and you probably will need to, but you want to make sure they're relevant and on topic, and use your own life experience to build them. That's where ideas come from quite quickly. So that could be one response altogether. Some of us, though, might, instead of talking to our coworker, some of us actually might select that second idea, where you would be talking to the customer. You might not know the customer's name. You probably wouldn't if they came up to you. So you might not use their name to start this, but you could greet them as, oh, hello, sir, or miss, or however you want to say that. You have to explain to the customer, in this case, why the shirt cannot be returned. I think this option, in my own opinion anyway, is going to be the harder of the two, simply because you're not giving the customer what they want. Your customer, is going to be angry about that. So if you choose this option, you're going to have to make sure in your response that your tone is still respectful. The words that we choose still have to try our very best to show respect to the customer, even though we're not giving in to their demands, plain and simple. All right, so again, you could choose this one. Off the top of my head, why the shirt can't be returned, I'm going to steal my argument for option one about the warranty or the regulations or policies at the store, and we can reverse that. Maybe we can make up the situation that the t-shirt was bought on the clearance rack, and the policy of our store says that any clearance or sale merchandise is final sale. So unfortunately, we simply cannot issue a refund for that item. Yeah. And Cassie was saying the same thing here, store policy. So store policy can work in either situation if you adjust it to suit your tone. Yeah. And so on. Anyway, I think you get the idea. You probably want 3 reasons, I would say, with details to fill that 60-second talking time. So again, choose whichever one is easiest for you. That's always the best testing strategy. Just make sure that the reasons make sense, that your tone is respectful, whether you're talking to your colleague or to that customer, and that you have filled the majority of those 60 seconds. Yeah. Cassie is suggesting, Cassie, would you mind right now in the Zoom settings, you're sending all of your great ideas just to me. So in that blue button that says to, could you make that everyone? Because everybody online will benefit from your wonderful ideas. You're very active in the Zoom chat. So that would be my recommendation. The rest of you cannot see Cassie's wonderful suggestion. So I will share it out loud just this once, but I'll rely on Cassie to change her settings so she can help the rest of us in future. Cassie is suggesting about a replacement item. So if you want to actually make up details like that, go for it, as long as they make sense. So you might just say, our store policy, sir, says that we can't actually accept back or refund an item that was bought on clearance. However, even though we can't issue you that refund, if there's another item at equal or lesser value on the sales rack that you would like to choose instead, we would be willing to honor that today. So the way I just said that, I think, is polite and respectful. We're still giving them something, but even though it's not really their initial demand. So that could definitely be one way to get around that issue. And that whole line of thinking, by the way, demonstrates higher critical thinking skills. And if you're able to come up with ideas that quickly on the spot, I'm hoping that you're going to get on up into that level 9 to 12 area. Your thinking is demonstrating that intermediate advanced approach. It's just that we have to have the vocabulary, of course, and the grammar structures to support it as well. I'm going to play for you now an actual CELPIP test taker's response. This is a woman who will give us her answer, and you can see she's chosen the name Eugene as her colleague. She's chosen option 1, where she'll be explaining to Eugene why that t-shirt has to come back as a customer is asking. Now, remember, on the actual test, the rating team does not have a transcript, but we are going to use transcripts as we review the material today, because it'll be so much easier for each of you to really assess the vocabulary, the ideas, the grammar, the sentence structure, when you can listen to the voice and follow the words on screen. You will actually receive all of these transcripts and audio clips in your study pack, by the way. So you can come back and review these at your leisure later on when you're studying. Okay, so listen in. If you have any comments about strengths or weaknesses, you're welcome to place those in the Zoom chat. But after we've listened, I'm going to guide our discussion through those 4 categories of skills that the checklist is telling us we need to demonstrate well. I'm going to start with listenability, which is all the speech presentation. All right, let's listen and we'll see how we do here.
Hello, Eugene. I just heard that you had an argument with the customer regarding with t-shirts. I think we have to return these t-shirts because as per the customer, she just wore only one times, and it is, I guess it clearly says that it's poor quality. Well, and before the other time, I remember that the same thing happened with another customer, and there was my supervisor, and the supervisor said we can refund the item when it clearly lacks some quality. And I think this brand has some warranty, so we can clearly double check with the manager. But I believe that we have to provide a warranty and provide a return for this customer as based on our previous experience. Thank you.
Okay, so my first question to each of you, I'm hoping is very easy. Under listenability, we're going to start with the speech presentation. What do you think about the pronunciation? Would you say the pronunciation was clear, yes or no? Let's literally just start with a few factors. We'll single them out, so we'll get used to what we're looking for here. Was pronunciation clear, yes or no? If you did not have a transcript, would you have been able to understand the language? Would you say yes? Would you say no? I always start with pronunciation because it's such a basic foundational skill. It's important. And I agree with all the yeses. Yeah, 100%. Pronunciation was absolutely fine. So far, so good. Hyo is also mentioning about cadence. Yeah, cadence would be sort of like rhythm. And that lends itself a little bit into intonation. Intonation is when the voice rises and falls. And we do that naturally once we've learned a language and are comfortable speaking it. This woman's rhythm, I think her intonation, everything about the speech part was quite natural. The speed, the volume. So the speech presentation skills are quite strong, I would say. Definitely no issues with volume, yeah. I did notice a handful of pauses, but nothing too crazy. There were maybe even a few interjections, and I'll circle them for you. So interjections, remember, are those funny sounds we make like or We do that often if we're thinking of an idea, or sometimes just as a natural way of speaking. A lot of us will do this naturally and automatically, whether we're aware of it or not. So I would say, even though we have some interjections here, they don't happen in every single sentence. And I don't think they happen too much to interrupt the flow of things. If we've got the skill set and the ability, we of course want to minimize these interruptions. But looking at the number of interjections, I wouldn't say it's going to completely distract us to the point where we can't follow anymore. Perhaps a bigger weakness of the listenability would be what I would call self-corrections. And I'm going to underline the repetitions. Did you notice this as you were listening? These come down to some of her reasons why we're going to take the t-shirt back. She's got some great ideas. It's just that she repeats the language and takes a while to spit the words out, to use an expression. She says, we can refund the item. And we can clearly double check with the manager. So if we're repeating and correcting our word usage to this extent, what that does is it does interrupt the flow of the response. So it can frustrate the listener if it happens too frequently. And on the CELPIP test, remember, you've only got 60 seconds in this case to really impress the raters with your capabilities in language communication. So you're wasting time on the clock. And I don't know, I didn't time how long it took me to read these sentences out loud. But even if it was, say, 5 seconds, that's enough for another supporting detail that we might have used somewhere else. All right, so try not to do this. I know it's hard. I know we're speaking on the spot. We could be nervous, but we're mindful of trying to move the speech forward without these repetitions and interruptions if we can help it anyway. All right, let's switch over to the grammar and sentence structure. This is still part of the listenability, part of the checklist. And I would say that I've seen some attempts here at complex structures. So I've just underlined this sentence for you. She's using the word because in order to connect ideas together. So this is a complex sentence structure, but you'll notice that there are several little tiny grammar mistakes. Quite often this woman, in fact, every time, She gets mixed up between singulars and plurals. So there's only one t-shirt. So we want to remove the S from all of these words, right? T-shirt, t-shirt, once. And that would be the end of that. So little tiny mistakes. Now, these mistakes do not affect our ability to understand the idea. So that is a good sign. But you'll notice we have several of these little mistakes. So they do tend to add up. And having many, even minor mistakes, will influence the score just a little bit. I also notice another attempt here. We're using another complex structure using the word before to connect ideas together. But apart from that, I am noticing this woman relies very heavily on common, simple, and basic conjunctions. Conjunctions are the words that connect ideas together. So the word and is probably one of the most common words in all of English. So it's okay to use sometimes, of course. In fact, it would be hard to avoid doing so. But we don't want to connect most or all of our ideas using that basic word. It's not showing that intermediate level that we're hoping to achieve if we would like a level 9 or higher. So the advice to this woman, and perhaps to some of you who are in the same boat, is to learn different conjunctions and transitions and structures so you can demonstrate a better variety of structures as you speak. The same goes for writing too, by the way. They will help boost your score in that area. So that takes care of listenability. I'd like to move on to the content to see how well this woman has identified her position and then supported it. So at some point in our opening, right away, we need to make it absolutely clear which of those two options we are going to be talking about. And she does that quite well. She says, we have to return this t-shirt. We'll forget that little grammar mistake and just focus there on the idea. So here's her main point. Main idea number one is that the t-shirt was worn only once. And then her supporting detail would be, obviously, then the t-shirt does not have quality. So that's what we mean when we say give your reason. That's the circled idea. And then just give a little bit of a supporting detail to extend it, to make it a little bit more interesting and clear. So she's done that in this example anyway. Okay, now the same thing happened. The vocabulary is quite basic, but her reasoning, her content reasoning is sound. She's looking at precedents. She's looking at a previous situation where the supervisor actually did refund an item that did not have the quality. So from a content standpoint, this is all making quite a bit of sense, which is great. And then her third and final reason here is talking about a warranty. And I think a lot of us had that idea in the Zoom chat earlier, talking about store policies and procedures. Same idea. So there's a warranty, and her supporting detail she adds in is to double check with the manager about the warranty. Okay, so the reasoning sound, even though there are these little grammar mistakes and some word choice issues, the content itself checks out. So we always have to remember to look for the strengths and not just focus on the weaknesses. That's what the rating team will do, and they will give you a score accordingly. So speaking of vocab, very quickly, I'm just going to underline quite a few words here that demonstrate accuracy. In other words, we understand what all of these words mean. And these words also demonstrate a little bit more precision or context-specific ideas. So yes, if we're talking about a retail situation, likely there would be a supervisor or a warranty or a manager involved, and so on, a customer. So that's what we mean. We're using language that is very specific to the situation in the test question. And she's showing a good range here, as you can see. She doesn't have repeated vocab. But there are a couple of other instances here. These three words in particular, even though they make sense, if you look back to the test question, the words customer, ripped, and poor quality are right in the test instruction. So we can't very well give this test taker credit for using vocabulary that she's simply copying right out of the question. So try your very best to use your own vocabulary at all times, because once again, you do want to give a good variety or range of vocab in your performance to the raters. Sometimes it can't be helped. Honestly, if the t-shirt has ripped, it's hard to think of a different word to indicate that. Maybe you say the t-shirt is damaged. I don't know. But do your best to use your own vocab. That's always the best advice as well. Okay, now there are some common words. I'd like to show you case these. So we just looked at some stronger examples earlier in green. Here in red, you can see words like I guess, the other time, the same thing happened, I think. When you really contrast the interesting word choice from earlier that was much more precise to the vocab I've underlined for you here, you'll see that these words are really common and really vague. They don't offer much in the way of value to the content of the response. So we don't want to use expressions like this if we can help it. We want to revise the wording. And then in many instances, these are, I would call them syntax errors. Syntax in language is the word choice you make, but also the order that you put your words in order to convey meaning precisely and accurately. So I think in each case, we always know what the woman is trying to say. It's just that the words are a little bit awkward. They're not quite naturally conveyed. So in that first example, she says, as per the customer. We know that the customer is unhappy, but we would probably phrase that more like the customer says, or regarding the customer's feelings. There are always ways to sort of smooth that out and make sure we're communicating it naturally. And just wore only one time. So we've looked at that. The t-shirt was worn once. She says that is poor quality. Not quite. The t-shirt lacks quality, we could say. And down at the bottom, we have to provide a warranty. We don't provide the warranty. The warranty itself is going to dictate whether or not the refund can happen. So again, we always know what she means in general terms, but we do have several instances, as you can see here, where we'd want to revise the wording and the word choice, just to make the meaning a little bit more natural and accurate is all. And the very last thing that we need to analyze before we can guess the score here would be called task fulfillment. So this is the part where we need to make sure this speaker has followed all instructions. And I would say, yes, she has. She made up the name for her colleague, which was a nice touch. She has summarized the situation in the beginning. We know there's a customer that has this ripped t-shirt, and we also know the opinion that we think we have to take that t-shirt back. She does give her 3 reasons of support to build the body or the middle part of this response. So all of that has been done quite well. So she's clearly understood the instructions, and all of her reasons make sense. They're relevant. The only part here that could be improved upon is the closing. It's polite, of course, to say thank you. But when you look at the situation where this speaker has just informed Eugene and given Eugene 3 reasons why we're taking this t-shirt back, Eugene has done nothing but stand there and listen, presumably. So there's no reason to say thank you at the very end. It's not suitable for this task, even though it's polite. To improve the conclusion, you just want to say something natural that makes sense for this situation. I might just say, anyway, Eugene, you're great with customers. I know you've got this, but I will be in the back of the store. So please call me out if you need some help. That's a longer conclusion. So if you had the time, you could develop that in. But you see how my example there is tailor-made to this retail situation where I'm making Eugene go and deal with this angry customer. So I thought it would be helpful and supportive if at the very least I could encourage my colleague and offer assistance if he needs it. So that's the way I would approach this. You can do what you'd like if there's a different idea you have. But thank you in this context doesn't really make sense. So it's more of a tone situation there. Just a tiny little thing, not a thing to worry about. But we're always looking for as many ways to improve our ability as we can. So I think working on conclusions is one way to do that too. Anyway, what I'd like to do right now, you can see on the screen in front of you a summary of strengths and weaknesses across all 4 of those areas of the checklist. And I'll leave that facing you as I've just launched an online Zoom poll. I'm hoping you can see it on your computer now. So my question to you is, do you believe this woman earned a level 8 or a level 9 for this particular response in her speaking test? I'll give you approximately 15 seconds more to make your choice. It just involves clicking on one of these 2 levels, 2 options in the poll. It's anonymous, so please don't be shy. Nobody else will know what you chose, so it's okay if you get it wrong. But this is what we'll do each time we analyze a response. I'll let you vote first. I'll ask you to vote. And then, of course, I'll reveal the right answer. So here's what you have said so far. Have a look. I'm sharing your results. So 78% of you are suggesting this is a level 8, with the remaining 22% suggesting it's a level 9. So I will reveal the score for you right now and let you know that this woman did indeed receive a level 8. So when you look back to the CELPIP scoring chart, you'll see that level 8 is called good proficiency. That's the word, the descriptor word we use for level 8. It's just good proficiency. Level 8 speakers definitely understand the question. They're able to form and deliver an answer that makes sense. But in level 8, sometimes it's either the ideas, the grammar, the sentence structure, the vocab, they still tend to be a little bit more on the common or the simple. They're not quite as developed, and they're certainly not consistently demonstrating that complexity that we would see in a level 9. Okay, so keep that in mind. Again, level 8 is still good, but all of you earlier today said, I'm looking for level 9 or 10 even higher if I can get there. So if you've done the CELPIP test before and have achieved a level 8, that's a good starting point. But now you know that you really need to push up, develop your content, use more interesting vocab, really try to get in some complex sentence structures. All of these higher level skills together are going to help you improve you a whole level or possibly more than one level, which would be ideal. Anyway, this brings us to the very first practice question that I'd ask you to do today. Remember, the microphones in Zoom are muted, so we will not hear you speak out loud right now. I hope you're currently in a quiet space, so you won't be shy. I would encourage you, even at home, and again, right now in practice with me, if you've got your cell phone handy or another recording device, I would ask you to record your response because you can listen to it back later on. In fact, if you typed out your own transcript, like I've done for these sample responses for you, you'll be able to see the words in front of you that you've been speaking aloud. And it's a really, really efficient way to analyze your own sentence structure, grammar, vocab, ideas, and so on. And when you listen to the recording itself, you can tell if your pronunciation's clear. Hopefully you're using some intonation. Hopefully you're not interjecting, and so on. All right. So anyway, get your recording device ready. I will quickly run over this question with you first before I set my timers and ask you to speak out loud, just to make sure we've all got some great ideas. So first and foremost, this would be a 60, this is another speaking test 6 question, by the way. So you would have 60 seconds to read and then 60 seconds to speak. So having a look here at the question, this one's a fun one, I think. You work in a pet store. A couple comes in to buy a pet. The wife would like to buy a dog because she thinks they're friendly and playful. The husband would rather buy a cat because he says they are independent and easier to take care of. So looking at your 2 options below, in either case, you will be speaking directly to the couple. So that never changes, regardless of which option you select. But obviously the animal that you're going to be suggesting is the difference here. So you have to either support the cat or the dog. Please do not make strong arguments for both animals or you are not following instructions and you will not score as well. Before I let you go with some prep time, because you will be delivering your own answer in a minute here, can we quickly brainstorm a few ideas together for the cat to start? This is option 1. And when you look back at the question, we already know this is the husband's preference, and it gives us a couple of loose ideas. So the cat, according to the husband, is independent and easy to take care of. So think low maintenance. So you can certainly use these ideas. I would definitely use my own vocab. As I just demonstrated, I wouldn't say, oh, the cat is easier to take care of. I would say the cat is a very low maintenance type of pet. Same idea, but I'm demonstrating my own vocab. That's just the main idea though. So if you chose to use that as a way to suggest to the couple the cat would be best for them, you're going to want to come up with a precise example. So off the top of your head, whether you've ever owned a cat or not, I myself have never owned a pet, but I love animals. I know what a cat is. And I can easily give you an example or two to prove to you that the cat is just really easy to take care of. It's quite low maintenance. It's quite independent. Can I have at least one great example in the Zoom chat? What is the first thing that comes to your mind? What does a cat do to prove to all of us that they really don't need us, quite frankly? They can take care of themselves. How do we know that they're that independent and low maintenance? Let me know. Okay, Cassie's saying they clean themselves. Yeah, you can see the cat licking their own fur. So they're basically bathing themselves. We don't have to take them to a vet to have them bath like you might a dog. Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, Simon, that one doesn't have anything to do with low maintenance. Yeah, we're not talking about that they're friendly. No, we're looking for examples to show that the cat is independent, low maintenance. So clean themselves is one, sure. Can you think of another one? Off the top of my head, I would suggest that cats don't need to be taken outside and walked several times a day like a dog does. So that's just another way to save our own time as pet owners, right? So again, easier to take care of. Sure. Yeah, good. So there's 2 there. They fight very well, Laura. I'm not sure where you're going with that. How is it important that a cat fights? That part I'm not following. So maybe I've missed something in translation. So let me know in the Zoom chat if you've got another idea there. Sure. Yeah. Okay, Simon, now you've got a good idea there. Yeah. So the cat generally stays indoors, not outdoors. So that kind of goes along with what I just said about you don't have to take the cat out to walk them. Yeah, good. Okay, and that's just one main point, by the way. We've really only been focusing on independent and low maintenance. So once you've done that, you might want to come up with a whole other main idea all on your own. Off the top of my head, I might just say, and cats too, by the way, are usually much less expensive to care for than a dog. The food for a cat, you can buy it in small tins, and the litter that you would use to change their litter box, that might only run you about $20 a week. Whereas to buy a huge bag of dog food for a very large dog, you're looking at $80 a week, minimum. So you probably will save yourself some money as well by buying a cat. Okay, so that's just another example. So again, what a level, in my opinion here, just from my own experience working with CELPIP test takers, generally speaking, I would say it's more that level 8 and below are going to rely quite heavily on the wording in the question. But by the time we practice these types of questions and these lines of thinking so many times, and we're up into that intermediate level 9 to 12, this is where we start going beyond the obvious or beyond what's in front of us, and we start imagining other relevant situations. So my suggestion about the cat being much cheaper than the dog, that is not written anywhere on this computer screen. That comes from my own life experience and my own mind, right? So that's what I would encourage you to do all the way through your CELPIP test for speaking and for writing. Sure, use what's in front of you and build it out to make it your own, but don't rely exclusively on it. The more you can think on your own and develop relevant material, the higher the score is going to be, likely, as long as it makes sense and it's been developed well. Okay, shifting gears. So that could be one answer. As I say, you've got 60 seconds. You'll need at least 2 main reasons with support. If you've got lots of supporting examples, 2 main reasons would be enough, because you still have to open the role play by greeting the couple and offering your assistance. And then you would close the role play as well. Probably you would say to them, anyway, think it through. And when you're ready to make a decision, I'll be ready to ring you up over here. Right? So factor in time for the intro and conclusion. The body or the middle piece will be a good 45 seconds. Think of it that way. If you didn't want to support the cat and you wanted to go down to the dog, well, let's do that right now for practice. Some of you here today might want to choose that as your practice that you're going to do next. So again, if you go back up to the question, you can start there. That's not a bad idea. It's the wife that wants the dog. So we're told that the dog is friendly and playful. These ideas are very, very common and quite simple, but we are welcome to use them as long as we make them our own. I wouldn't say friendly. That word is right in front of us and it's plain. Could we maybe say they're affectionate? They'll offer us company on a lonely day. So those are ways to kind of get around just copying right from the question. Okay, so if we went with that, if we would say that a dog is usually more affectionate than a cat, what example might you give me? How do we know that a dog just loves you so much? How can you prove to the world that dogs are generally quite affectionate creatures? Again, I've never had a dog, but oh, I love dogs. I've had many friends and family members who have had dogs, so I could easily give you at least 3 examples off the top of my head. Laura, can you push that further? What do you mean by greeting? I agree with you, but what exactly does the dog do to greet you that you know that dog loves you and has missed you? Cassie's helped you out with that. Yeah, the dog often comes up to you, and when the dog comes to you, what do they do? What do they do precisely? Laura, that's better. So the dog will greet you at the door. And as Cassie says, quite often they'll lick your hand or nuzzle your leg with their head to show affection. Perfect. We're done with that idea, and then we can move on. So after talking about how they're affectionate, they love us so much, they're a good source of companionship, I might then develop it further and say they actually will motivate you to lead a healthier lifestyle. Dogs do need to be walked regularly outdoors so you can walk the dog and get your own steps in as well. Okay, so something like that would work. That's 2. I'm going to leave you think on the 3rd one. You'll probably need 3 reasons to fill that talking time. Okay, so is everyone set? I'm going to set the preparation time clock there on the top right-hand side of the screen. It's going to count down 1 minute in total. Use that time to continue to think. In this time, what you would do on the official test is read the question, make your decision as to which of those 2 options you're going to be speaking about, and then start thinking of your reasons. I think at least if you can come up with 2 or 3 main reasons, Then start thinking of specific details, but you'll probably have to make up some of the specific details as you speak. You might not have time to develop the entire outline in the prep time. But after that prep time's done, I will announce it out loud here into my microphone and let you know it's time to speak. At that point, I would like you to hit record on whatever device you're using. So you actually leave today's webinar with a couple of recordings of yourself, so you can workshop those later. But you'll have 1 minute on the clock and you'll be able to see the minute counting down. So this is really good practice to show you what it feels like to speak for 1 minute. Okay, so everybody's ready, I hope. The 1 minute preparation time is starting right now. Prep time is finished. So on the official test, what you would hear is start speaking now. And I'm going to start that 1 minute talk time. So hit record on your cell phone right now. Start speaking now. And that is time. So I hope that you were keeping an eye on the clock there and were able to wrap up before the clock got to 0. If you are still speaking when time is up on the official test, the microphone is just going to shut off altogether. So you would be cut off in the middle of, say, your final sentence. If you have given a full answer and it's obvious you were finishing, it's not really going to affect your score. But if you are trying to develop a main point and you get cut off, then yes, it would be a problem. So that's why we practice under time conditions to hopefully prevent any such situations from occurring. How did that go for everybody? Maybe we can do a quick poll. How many of you chose the cat? How many of you chose the dog? Just out of curiosity. This is always the first step. When you're preparing, you need to make a quick decision. You can't dilly-dally and spend half your prep time thinking about which one you chose. So hopefully you made a choice very quickly. How many ideas do we each have to suggest? How many main points? How many main points? Do we all get at least 2 main reasons, possibly 3? Maybe let me know in the Zoom chat there and we'll go from there. Okay. There's no rule that tells you how many reasons you must have. Here's what I would suggest though. You need at least 2, absolutely 2 reasons. If you only ever gave 1 reason, your answer would not be considered complete. You know, in 60 seconds, it's expected you'd have at least a couple of ideas. So at least 2. I think 3 is the best because 3 reasons proves to the rating team without doubt that you've got enough content to develop the idea. Okay, any more than 3, it is possible, but I caution you because remember, for each main idea or main reason in this case, you do want some examples and supporting details. So if you've got time to think of 4 or 5 reasons, I'm guessing you're probably not developing the ideas as much as they should be. So it's better to have, say, 2 or 3 key reasons and then supporting details for each of them. And that would still allow you to have a good concluding statement as well. Okay, yeah, good. Now I've already given out an example of a good concluding statement there, Laura. So maybe if my colleague Simon wants to provide another one, that would be great. But for time's sake, if you don't mind, we're going to move on here so we can get into speaking task 7. In task 6, just to wrap up what we've just been doing here, it is a role play, so you will be speaking directly to whoever the question tells you to, quite frankly. In this case, it was a couple at a pet store. So you'd be speaking to them directly. You're going to be considerate. You're going to be confident, though, with your opinion, right? We're always going to be respectful, but we must state what our opinion is first. That's by stating our choice. And then, of course, the more effective and relevant your reasons and supporting details are, the better your score would be here for content anyway. All right. On to speaking task 7, which is all about expressing opinions. Here is the setup for your task 7. You get only 30 seconds to think, which is pretty standard for many questions on the speaking test. But you'll notice that this is one of those 90-second recording times. So we do have to prepare a few more details. Remember, in task 6 just now, you practiced for 60 seconds. So you will do one more practice with me here today for task 7, and you're going to feel the difference. You have more details to think of since you've got 30 extra seconds to fill here. So the question itself is short, and this is the good news. Do you think that governments should limit how much money company bosses make? You'll notice it's a yes or no type question. So in those 30 seconds, it shouldn't take you more than 4 or 5 seconds to read that simple sentence there. Quickly decide yes or no right away. And whatever your answer is, that's going to be your opinion. That's the easy part. Within, say, the next, maybe you've got about 22 seconds left on your prep time clock, you'll start thinking about reasons why you feel that way. You can take notes on your test if you want to. You're given paper and pen. I think I would myself anyway, just to remember what my main points would be. So you would only have time here in the 30 seconds of prep likely to come up with those main reasons. And then when it comes time to speak, this is when you'll be thinking quickly on the spot to add in some supporting details. Once again, I'm presuming that everyone on this webinar has had a job at some point in their lifetimes. I'm making that sweeping assumption. So if this was your actual CELPIP test question, right away, I would want you to think about any job you've ever had, think about the boss that you worked for, and imagine this situation. You know, does your boss make so much more money than you? How does that make you feel? Do you think that's okay? These are the types of questions you're asking yourself as you're trying to put together a really relevant answer. Okay, drawing on personal life experience is always, I think, the easiest and fastest way to generate relevant ideas. Anyway, let's listen to a male test taker this time give us his answer. Again, we will follow a transcript that we prepared for you. Remember, though, on the real test, there will be no transcript, just the audio. So I'll play it now. And as before, we will analyze together all 4 of those skill sets from the rating checklist. I will start with the listenability. So really tune into this man's pronunciation, his rhythm, you know, even look at things like grammar and sentence structure. We'll talk about that first. So here we go. Let's listen first.
This is a very difficult question. I do think that governments should limit how much money company bosses make for at least 2 main reasons. The first one is ethical. If you provide bosses no limit in their earning, this will raise significant social disparities and will create more friction among the society. However, the limit that the government should put on the earning is not easy to determine. Competition, willingness to improve our position and career is often moved by money and earning and salary. Why someone should aim for a higher and more responsible job with more difficulties, more duties, when the money is not so significant and someone else has a limit. The governments will have to find solution to promote this cutting salaries, maintaining a significant benefit for the bosses.
And that is the end of that. Okay, like we did last time, would we say this man's pronunciation was clear? Just really quickly in the Zoom chat, would you say yes or would you say no? Could you understand the words? This is always a foundational place to start when we're trying to assess that listenability area. Even without a transcript, could you follow along? Did it all make sense to you? And I'd have to agree with the yeses. Yeah, I think the pronunciation was absolutely clear, so nothing really to report. The man's intonation and volume were also fine. Again, I've noticed some interjections. I think you probably did as well, but they weren't happening so frequently as to interrupt the flow of the piece. There is one weakness, I think, that maybe did interrupt the flow a little tiny bit. Can anybody suggest, just from the speech elements here, what you would pick out to be the most noticeable weakness? So think back to the qualities we're looking for in a stronger response. Is there any weakness that one of you might suggest here that the man might want to work on? Oh, good try, Laura. It's not intonation. I think his intonation was actually quite natural. I would have to agree with Benjamin. I think it was the pauses. Yeah. Now I'm going to say this particular test question, I think, is actually quite difficult, as the man says right in his opening. And because we're thinking on the spot and trying to put together a logical response, I know it makes sense that we might take a few pauses to reframe ideas. So that is natural to a point. But I think that the length of the pauses here in this particular response were maybe just a shade long. So if we could somehow think a little bit more quickly, reduce the length of those pauses, it would definitely help to strengthen the listenability. So it's a small error. Now, remember, it's only one little factor under listenability. We've just said that everything else, his intonation, his pronunciation, it's fine. We don't notice any self-corrections or troublesome interjections and so on. So there's definitely lots of strengths there. But if we're looking for weaknesses, I would say pausing would probably be the most obvious. His sentence structure, this man's sentence structure, is actually more complex than what we saw earlier. So there's definitely one complex structure. There's another example, another one. All right. Another one. So if you looked at the woman's capability earlier and this man's capability, if you're just looking at sentence structure complexity, this man certainly demonstrates more consistent control. Now, she got a level 8. We can't just assume then that this man's going to get a level 9 automatically, only because his sentence structures are higher. This is one element that we notice is stronger. So we'll have to now go back and look at all the other factors to see if he's done enough to really earn that level 9. I still see a couple, not many, luckily, but just a couple of really short, simple sentence structures that I would advise you to try to avoid if at all possible. If you can connect these ideas into other sentences, it's also going to demonstrate more complexity, which will help this score. Okay, now on to content. Our test taker does give his opinion early. I don't love how he's just copied right off the test screen. He's used word for word what the test instructions say. It's not ideal, but at the very least, he has clearly stated his opinion. I do think that governments should limit how much money company bosses make. Okay, so with that in mind, let's examine his first reason. Ethical is a great word, and his reasoning makes a lot of sense. This is wonderful. His whole idea there is basically saying if a boss can make an unlimited amount of money, he says there will be these significant social disparities and friction. Now, he says among society, and I think instead what he means is among the employees at the company. And I know exactly what he means. Perhaps you can relate as well. So if you've been in a job where you are working very hard, you are contributing in your own mind, and you're making a decent salary, but the boss that you work for is making so much more money than you, and you don't perceive that the boss is even maybe doing as much work or not that much more work anyway. You can understand that an employee after time might say, gee, why am I only making this much money? And the boss is making 6 figures. You know, that's not fair. That's what he means by disparities and friction. There will basically be hard feelings. And we all know what happens when an employee isn't feeling respected on the job, right? They might quit, they might not work as hard, and so on. So I think this reason is a fantastic starting point to this whole response. But unfortunately, the more than half of the response here, the second half, we'll call it, The man takes his response in a completely opposite direction. He uses the joining word, however. The word however means an opposite idea is coming, and that's not what we're supposed to do. This entire idea at the bottom, and again, I'll use my laser pointer to show you the precise areas. The man is questioning why anybody would be a boss. He says, why would anyone aim for this higher job with more responsibilities when their money is not so significant? Yeah, so why would you be a boss if you're not making so much money? This position here is completely the opposite to the opinion that he stated up here. So we have a mixed match. We have a very incoherent response. We get a reason to support why we should cap the boss's salary. And then we get a reason to support why the boss should be able to make as much money as they can. So at the end of this response, we, the listeners, are left wondering what this man's opinion actually is. It's not demonstrating that the man fully understood the question. So that's going to definitely hurt his score under task fulfillment. And just from that content and coherence standpoint, it's not coherent at all. Coherence means that all of your ideas flow well together. So this would be, unfortunately, a very, very serious mistake that would definitely have a noticeable impact on the score, which is a shame because this man has a lot of other strengths that I'd like to point out. His vocabulary is fantastic. Look at all of the precise and interesting word choice with that variety. Words and phrases like ethical, raise significant social disparities, create more friction, and on it goes from there. Very, very well done with vocab. Again, there's a couple very either unnatural or frankly very vague ideas that could be removed. Like it's not necessary to say for at least two main reasons. You don't yet know how many reasons you'll have to develop until you start speaking. So I would take that phrase out. And among society is really vague. We've already talked about that might be among employees at the company. And that third example, moved by money, is a little bit unusual. Maybe motivated by money would be a little bit more accurate. But again, if you're looking at the sheer number of words he's using well, accurately, and precisely, as compared to just a couple of weaker choices, if you're balancing those out, he definitely comes out ahead. There are more strengths than there are weaknesses under vocabulary alone. So it's nice to think of it that way. But as I said, for task fulfillment, the good thing is he does speak for 90 seconds, and that would be considered a strength. He does provide his position, and we know that we need to do that in our task 7. But because he only gives us one reason to support why the government should cap the boss's salary, and because his second half of the response is completely off topic and not relevant, unfortunately, that is going to have a negative impact, as we said, on the score. So I'm showing you right now his little summary chart. And again, you will get all of these charts in your study pack, so you can come back and review. But I've just launched a second poll, and I'm wondering if you could assess what you believe this man's score to be. He certainly has lots of strengths. I pointed them out to you, but he has some major weaknesses too. So this might be a slightly more difficult response to evaluate. And this is where the rater's job does become more challenging because they really have to go through all 4 of those categories. And they're looking at about 20 different factors or skill sets or precise skills. So I'll give you about 5 or 6 more seconds there to get your vote in. And then I will, of course, reveal what the man actually earned. Okay, that looks good to me. So here's where you're split on this poll. You've got exactly 3/4 of you, 75% saying this is likely a level 8. And then the other quarter are saying perhaps it's a level 9. Well, here's what the official score was. It is indeed a level 8. Now, that being said, I fully believe in my heart of hearts, given some of the strengths I did see within this response, I think this man is certainly capable of achieving a higher score. It's just unfortunate that he misunderstood the question and went down the wrong path. This could happen to you on your test. And here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to have just a really bad response and completely give up and think all is lost. I want you to remember there are 8 speaking tasks altogether. You are going to get an individual score on each of those 8 tasks. Those 8 scores will be averaged together, and that is what determines your overall speaking score on the score report. So there might be 1 question or even 2 that are a little bit harder for you, and maybe you don't quite score as well as you would have liked. But if you are still scoring very well in the other 6 or 7 responses, we'll say, because the score is average, it's not going to impact your score, I think, as much as you fear. So I always want you to handle every single question as its own separate question, perform your best on that question. And then when you move to the next task, you're starting fresh. That would probably be the best approach here. So to that end, here's what I'd like you to do if you're sincerely interested in improving both your speaking and writing skills at home. I've been asking you today to record all of your practice and type out your own transcript. And this is exactly why. We right now together as a group are going to go through this man's original response, as you see here, and we're going to revise it. We're going to do our best to improve it in any way we can. So these would be the steps I would encourage you to take on your own at home. Do it by yourself first, maybe then work with a tutor or a teacher if you have one, or perhaps have a friend or an office mate who's highly proficient in English. But you definitely want to do some self-assessment to see what you can improve. So what we're going to start here, again, this is the original response. And I just used green print, as you can see, to draw your eyes to the opening of this man's response. I think the very first thing I'm going to do is obvious, I hope. We're just going to remove that first phrase. We don't need to start this response by saying, this is a very difficult question. I agree. You probably agree, but that's not helpful for the response, for the content. So we're going to take that little phrase out. And instead of copying word for word the opinion from the test, what I'd like to do first is actually make it more interesting by giving, say, a sentence of background context. And then we're going to phrase our opinion, but using our own vocabulary. So this is a really high level way to do it. So again, we've crossed out that opening. As you can see, this is a very difficult question. We don't need that. So we're going to start with an introductory sentence, and it reads, the top executives in some of the biggest companies in the world can make millions of dollars, while many workers struggle just to make enough to pay the bills. Okay, so we're giving, as I said, the background. We're talking about the work world. So that we've set the stage quite nicely. That second purple sentence is going to be the opinion in our own language now. So we've said, for this reason, I believe it's necessary for governments to restrict how much money top executives make. So we've underlined some words there to show you, again, precise and specific and interesting word choice. So we've added some detail that's going to help content. We've created some complex sentence structures here, and we've also included some very precise and interesting vocab. So we're looking to maximize our score, bigger bang for our buck, to use a casual expression. We're hitting on many different skills parts of that checklist, hoping for a better score. So we'll leave that opening as it is. I think it's pretty strong. That next section in green, this is the next part of the man's response that I think we can improve just a little bit. It's pretty good the way it is, but my biggest concern is that first simple sentence. The first one is ethical. We can easily connect these ideas together. And I'm also interested in adding more transitions in order to do that. So let's play around and try something like this. We've got two sentences again, because we're really going to build it out. So at a societal level, there's my transition. When some citizens can make millions more than others, it creates serious social disparities that have strong potential to increase friction among people who belong to different socioeconomic classes. So up to there, that's pretty much the same idea the man gave us. We've just added in those underlined phrases. And we've kept a lot of his wonderful vocab, words like social disparities and potential and friction. These words were already high level, so we'll keep them in. I swapped out, he had said significant social disparities. I thought serious social disparities maybe was a little bit stronger, but I think either way it would have been fine. That last purple sentence, we added one more idea there just to sort of conclude that main point before moving on to the next reason. And again, we wanted a complex sentence. So here's what we said. If salaries are closer, there can be more harmony, less stress and anxiety, and hopefully less crime. So we've really, really developed that point nicely. Now that the rest of this response in green, as you know by now, is completely off topic. So we have to remove the entire thing. So right where I'm pointing, before we get to that concluding statement, we need to come up with another suitable idea to explain why the boss's salary should be capped at a certain level. And we've just come from saying, basically, there could be disparities between people working in the company or belonging to different socioeconomic classes. So if we wanted to build on that, again, maybe just think about the high turnover rate, perhaps, of employees in this company that are not feeling respected. What if people are quitting because they might find closer salaries in another position. And if people are always leaving a company, well, that can't be good either for the company and its revenue. So that might be one direction you could take this in. So notice, instead of saying however, we're going to switch that and say furthermore. Furthermore is another high level conjunction. It's called a conjunctive adverb. It works the same as and or also, but it's fancier, it's more precise, and that's what we want for this response. So furthermore means we're adding a similar idea next. So we've said, furthermore, companies who do not distribute salaries fairly may be limiting their own long-term potential. After all, if workers cannot afford to live reasonably, it will impact how productive they can be for the company. Also, more workers may leave, which will create the need for continual training. So that summarizes nicely what I was just mentioning. And the last thing to do here, I suppose we're now going to have to rewrite that entire conclusion because we've changed that second point. So here's something that ties the entire response together now. While I don't think government should dictate salaries to companies, guidelines are needed so that these issues can be minimized. So once again, it's a complex structure. It actually is on point or relevant to the entire response and position we were talking about. And we've underlined for you, again, some examples of very precise and context-specific vocabulary. Now, this response, we cannot give it a score. It was revised outside of a testing room. It was revised by CELPIP Test instructors, right? So none of the conditions of the testing world would allow us to give this a score. But I hope the takeaway here is we can see that we started earlier with a level 8. There were some strengths in the man's response, but he had some major weaknesses. So the way that we've revised it now, I'm hoping we can all agree that this would definitely score much higher than level 8 if it had been written in the testing room by an actual test taker. Okay, so more advanced level for sure. This process is going to take you time and it's going to take you patience if you choose to employ it at home when you're studying. But I sincerely encourage you to put the time in, because when you can see for yourself what you're saying out loud and look at your vocab and look at your grammar and look at your sentence structure and then take the time to improve it to the best of your ability, that's truly where you see growth in your skills, right? So anyway, think about it and see if you can incorporate this style of revision into your own study routines. So with that in mind, you will have a chance to create your final recording today anyway in this session. Hopefully you've got your cell phone at the ready to hit record. Because we're coming nearer the end of our session today, I'm not going to discuss or provide any support on the question I'm going to show you on the next screen. As soon as I move to that question, I'm going to immediately start a 30-second prep time clock. You'll see that clock on screen. I would like you to read the question by yourself and start thinking about or identify your opinion and start thinking of reasons. After 30 seconds is up, I will announce that out loud and ask you to speak. 90 seconds is your time that you're trying to fill. So here's a question. The prep time is at the bottom and it starts now. Prep time is up, so please hit record right now on your device before you forget and start speaking now. And time is up. So that was 90 seconds. Remember, your first practice today was 60 seconds. So you've just had to continue speaking for 30 extra seconds. Chances are you would have needed a whole other main reason here with supporting details to fit that. Anyway, what I'd like to do is play for you an actual CELPIP test taker answer now for this very same question you've just had a chance to practice. So if it was difficult for you, I'm hoping that you will get some ideas here from this woman giving us her answer. So we'll listen in and we will analyze it as we've done in the past. Here we go.
Yes, I think it's very beneficial for high school students to be required to learn a second language, especially here in Canada, to learn French. I've seen it in the workplace. It's very beneficial for workers to have a second language, especially French, because first thing, more compensation if you're bilingual, French bilingual. Right, that's first thing for me, and of course it opens up a whole new like field of work where you, if you're not bilingual or you don't have a second language, you will never be able to enter. So that opens up like different opportunities. Also, not even in just not opportunities in Canada. You also have the option of to work for the federal government, which is very good as well. And also, if you have plans of going abroad, going out of the country to work or to study, it's very beneficial if you know, at least understand a little bit the second language, right? Not some, of course, if you're going to be working and you're going to be using a second language, it's very beneficial if you're fluent in it. But some people, if you're just like visiting other countries, going on vacations, it's beneficial if you at least learn the basics or know the basics.
And that would be that. So I'll just quickly save us some time and suggest that this woman's pronunciation, her intonation, her rhythm, all of the speech elements are done quite well. There are some interjections, but again, they're not so frequent. They're not really problematic. There's one little self-correction, and I wanted to draw your attention to it. It's not a huge problem only because it happens once, but I wanted to show you here, if you're speaking and you realize you've made a little mistake, maybe you've made a grammar mistake or chosen the wrong word or something to that effect, it is perfectly acceptable to correct it exactly how this woman did. So she started speaking by saying, not even in ke, and she realized she forgot the word opportunities. So what she rightfully did is she just paused for a moment. She said the right phrase, just not opportunities in Canada, and she continued. Notice she did not draw attention to her mistake, didn't apologize for it. If this does happen to you, just take a quick pause, say the right thing, and continue on, and you'll be fine. If you self-correct like this frequently, though, it is going to interrupt the flow and be a problem. But given that it's happened just once, it's really not going to affect the listenability score so much. Nothing to worry about, in other words. Okay, from a grammar and sentence structure standpoint, definitely stronger capabilities. So we're seeing lots of evidence here of these complex sentence structures. And we already know by now that by the time, if we want to achieve that level 9 or higher, this is really what we want to be demonstrating. That being said, there are some areas, just like we saw from the man earlier, I guess, that the sentences are a little bit shorter and simpler. So it would be nicer if we could connect those in somehow. And once again, this woman does rely a little bit heavily on these simple conjunctions. So it's a balancing act. She is showing complexity in many cases, but there's still a little bit of room for further development of that skill, as you can see here. Okay, now on to content. We know what her opinion is, and just like the man did, she also repeated word for word, copied right from the test instructions. It's not ideal, but at the very least, we are very clear on her opinion. She says it is beneficial for high school students to learn a second language. What this woman does very cleverly is she provides almost a narrative framework. She uses her own experience living here in Canada, speaking French. And because she's speaking to us in English, we can presume she speaks both English and French, right? So she's using herself as this example of learning a second language. Now, I know the question focuses on high school students, but she's able to use her own abilities to show, I guess, a younger student graduating how having that second language is going to be beneficial down the road. Her first main reason is all about compensation. which is a wonderful word choice meaning salary. Basically, she's saying if you're bilingual, French bilingual, look at the vocab, meaning if you speak more than one language, French and English in her case, you're going to make more money. So that would be her first reason. Her second reason is it opens up a whole new field of work. So in other words, more job opportunities. And remember, she said that she lives in Canada and speaks English and French. Look at her supporting detail. She correctly mentions that in Canada, if you wanted to work for the federal government, you would need to speak English and French because those are the two official languages of Canada, and that would be a requirement for that job. So as I said, it's just the level of thinking, it's the creativity and the framework around this, where she's really anchoring the scene in her own experience is what makes this quite unique. Her third reason is here. She mentions if you go abroad. So imagine a student going abroad to work or to study, meaning leaving the country. I myself in my own head, I can imagine all the reasons why a high school student would need another language if they're out of the country. The problem is this woman doesn't give us any. She literally just keeps repeating over and over again how beneficial it would be if you're leaving the country to have that additional language. So throwing in one or two examples here is all that's necessary. So maybe we might suggest, for example, if you are hailing a taxi or if you are lost and need directions, you could communicate with the locals to ask for directions and so on. Or if you're ordering food off of a menu in a restaurant and so on. So think of one, maybe two examples to throw in here, and then the content would be fully supported. I think her first two reasons were supported very well, but she's missed the details here in that third part. Okay, her vocab, really high level, very precise, very natural, very varied, right? We don't have any repetition here. We are showing different expressions that we know how to use, like opens up a new field of work and learning the basics. So this is great. If you know expressions that make sense, please use them. The rating team will see that you've got a good variety of language. Even though we have such a strong command of vocab most of the way through this answer, though, I see a word that's repeated over and over again. I think I counted it 5 times, and I'm wondering if any of you noticed it as well. Can you pick out a word? I'll just leave the transcript as is for now. Just have a quick little scan with your eyes. See if you can pick out the repeated word. So this is the only little tiny weakness I could find anyway with the vocab. No takers. I am surprised. Oh, there it is. There it is. Cassie's got it. Yeah. Usually when I do this webinar, everybody jumps in and says, but wait a minute, she's repeated this word so many times. I say, yeah, don't do this. Plain and simple. The word beneficial comes from the test instructions, first of all. So it's not even our own vocabulary. And it's a fine word. Maybe use it once or twice, but you certainly don't want to use it 5 times. It's not demonstrating the range that we're looking for. So it's just a matter of coming up with synonyms. Maybe instead of saying beneficial, you might say it's helpful, it's advantageous, it's best, and so on. So change it up to the best of your ability. Again, I remind you, she's got more strengths in vocab than she does with this one little tiny weakness. So she comes out on top, right? She's still ahead of the game, but we're pointing out today any weakness we find so you can remember yourselves to work on these skills at home. And from a task fulfillment standpoint, yeah, she answers the question. She tells us her opinion that high school students should learn an additional language. She does give 3 reasons, and she supports the first 2. That third one's missing, but it doesn't make the answer incomplete. It just means that more detail might have been added in. She speaks for 90 seconds, and her tone is appropriate. She's sharing an opinion. She's sounding confident, but respectful. That's exactly the tone that we want to take. So what do you think here? I'll put the fresh poll online. Did this woman earn a level 8 or did she earn a level 9 in your opinion, based on what we know? Remember to consider all 4 categories of skills. We never base a score on one particular area. It always has to be a balance of strengths and weaknesses across all areas here. Okay. All right, we're a little closer than I would like for this question, but we still have 60% of you suggesting this is a level 9. And you'd be absolutely correct. Yeah, this is an obvious level 9 once you've analyzed as many CELPIP responses as I have. For many reasons. I mean, she does demonstrate complexity in all facets, every single category there. You can see evidence of that complexity. I go back to her content because it's what I call outside the box thinking. Do you know this expression? She doesn't just rhyme off the most obvious reasons how having a second language is beneficial. Remember, she really tailors it to her own unique experience of being French English bilingual in Canada. So when we're able to put together a response with such abstract type of thinking and tailor it to the question, that is definitely demonstrating that higher level critical thinking that will certainly help all of us achieve an intermediate or advanced level score. So well done with that. In your task 7, just to wrap this up here, remember that the question you get, it will be a short question, but you have to answer yes or no immediately in your prep time. That's going to form your opinion. And then you're going to come up with probably 3 reasons to fill 90 seconds. For every single reason, you must give examples or details. If you could, like in our first response there with the man, once we revised his answer, I realized we only had 2 main reasons why the boss's salary should be capped. But you remember in that example, we had so many supporting details for both reasons. That's why we got away with only 2 reasons. It's still considered a complete answer. So you have a little bit of choice, but I would suggest for the average person in 90 seconds, probably 3 reasons with support for each is easier for you to fill that time wisely. And also the last point here about using transitions, just to make sure we know your next idea is starting would be great. So we might just say another way having an additional language is helpful for teenagers in high school is, and so on and so on. Okay, let's finish up today. We've got about a half an hour left of time here today, and we have 1 more task to complete. So this is speaking task 8, describing an unusual situation. This is the final question on the entire CELPIP test and the end of the speaking test as well. So here's the question. I'll draw your attention as well to the time. So this is a 30-second prep time and a 60-second recording time, which is pretty standard. Most of the CELPIP speaking tests are like this. So here's your question. Notice that the question for task 8 is always going to give you 3 individual instructions. So the background is, we read, a new friend invited you to visit his home. His home. That's a man. So when you start your answer, it's a role play. You're going to make up the name of your friend. Doesn't matter what the name is. It just has to be a man. That's what we've learned from that little detail. It says, you think you have found the street where he lives. However, you cannot find his house. So that's all background. Here is step 1. Call your friend. This is so easy. Hey, Kevin, how are you today? Right? Hey, Kevin, can't wait to see you. That's all you need to do here. Step 2, explain in detail where you are standing. This is going to be the majority of the speaking time for this question. You're looking at this picture as you speak, and you're trying to give in as much accurate detail as you can so that your friend, I've called him Kevin, could understand in his mind where you're standing and then give you directions to his house. So you call your friend, explain where you're standing in this picture. And then 3rd step is to ask him how to find his house. You have to do those 3 things. Otherwise, you've not fully and completely answered the question. So in the prep time, this is exactly what I would recommend. You're trying to decide which parts of this picture are most helpful for this task. You will not have time to talk about every single part of this picture. Don't even try. It's not a good use of time. If it were my answer, you always want to give that overview. So I would probably start here. And this is what my response might sound like. I might say, hey, Kevin, can't wait to see you today, but I'm a little lost and I'm hoping you can direct me to your home. I'm currently standing at the bottom of this long winding road that I see moving uphill to a forest in the background. Okay, that's where I would start. And then I would pick and choose very unique elements to draw in. Since I just said I'm standing at the bottom of this winding road, I think it makes sense to bring in these yellow objects. Do any of you know what this is called? That little yellow bump I'm pointing to, what would you call that? Yeah, Manjeet saying speed bumps. That's what we refer to them in Canada, but I think they might be called different things depending where you were born and raised. I know in parts of the world they call them speed breakers, if I'm not mistaken. So if you were to say that, that would be okay. People are going to know, right? So we would call them speed bumps in Canada. So at least we've learned that word if you didn't know it. If you couldn't think of the word, you just think of something and you might just say, there are these yellow concrete bumps across the road. I think they're used to slow down traffic. So you could get away with that if you didn't know the word speed bump. So there's almost always a way to describe what you're looking at. So after I've done that, I think, because time is of the essence, I've only got 60 seconds, right? And I've been talking probably for a good 20 seconds by now. The whole point of this task is to ask for directions to the house. So I want to draw in information about the houses I see. Clearly, this is a blue house, yes, but that vocabulary is very basic. It's not level 9 material, we'll say. What type of a house is this, would you say? Definitely not an apartment building, right? Just looking at the type of house pictured here, what would you call this? There's many different words that come to mind. What are some ideas coming to your mind? And look at all the great suggestions in the Zoom chat. We might call this a bungalow or a duplex or a townhouse. Yeah, a 2-story home. Sure, any of those would be just fine. So again, if you don't have that vocab, you might just have to say, I see some small blue houses on both sides of the road. It's not fancy, it's not specific or incredibly high level, but at least it's accurate. And accuracy is always the most important to start. Once you've learned the vocab, you can make it more interesting by saying, I see rows of townhouses on both sides of the street. And it looks to me, Kevin, that in the back of each house, there are these sliding patio doors with purple curtains in the windows. Okay, now that is more detailed, descriptive, and interesting and precise, isn't it? Than just saying there's a blue house. So you're always pushing yourself for more description when it makes sense to do so. I think Kevin could easily see, oh yeah, that's my home. I'm the one that has the purple curtains, perhaps, right? We don't know what he's going to say. Anyway, after I mentioned that, you might have time to talk about a few things. You're going to keep talking till 60 seconds is almost up before you finish the response off. So maybe you mentioned there's this underground parking garage. There's a yellow sign above the door that has the word slow on it, perhaps. What about this item here? You might just say, to the left of this garage door, I see a, what's this called? Anybody know an interesting word? Try to make it unique but accurate. Garbage bin would be okay. No, it's not a dumper. Good try. You're almost there. The word I'm looking for is a dumpster. That's what we would refer to these gigantic garbage bins. That's all it is. A garbage bin or container is accurate. But when you say dumpster, that's the most precise word you can think of. So again, you've got choice, but hopefully you've got the most precise word at the tip of your tongue. This is not that important in my opinion, but if you were looking to fill the time, you might mention there's a lamppost behind the bushes to the right side of the parking garage. Sure. Maybe that you mentioned there's a red Canada Post box there on the lawn, on the left side of the road, whatever makes sense to you in the time that you have. You will definitely want to finish off your response. So remember, we do have to make it clear. We're looking for directions. So at the end of this one, I might just say, anyway, Kevin, as soon as you let me know exactly which house is yours, I'll be there in a moment. Done, right? Something like that would work just fine. So we're going to analyze this response together in this case by looking at the picture. I will show you the transcript next, but I think the only way we can make sure that this woman is accurately describing the scene is if we actually look at the picture while we listen to the descriptions. So I'll play it for you now, and then we'll go through the checklist and see how she's done.
Hey Ritu, how are you? Hey, I'm exactly near to your house, but I'm really not sure where I need to move. It's on the right side. I have to take the right street or the left street. I'll just explain you a little bit so you have an idea where exactly I am. I can see a board on which it's written SLOW. It's a yellow board with a black written on it, and there's one garbage bin near to it, and it's open, and I can see there's a big townhouse, and down the townhouse is a parking lot, and there's so many trees across the road which I can see. So I really feel, just tell me, is it the right place I am on, or do I need to take a different street? And I can tell you this road goes exactly towards the right, and there are
Okay, now she got cut off at the end, and we'll look at her transcript in a minute to see if that's a problem or not. But in the meantime, quickly, as we look at this response or picture, with the listenability parts, I'll say her pronunciation is mostly clear, but there's one part we could not understand. And unfortunately, it was one of the descriptions. She was talking about what was on the sign. We couldn't make out the word, so that would have a slightly negative impact as it's a main point to miss. There were definitely some hesitations you might have noticed too. So they had a minor impact on the rhythm or the flow of the speech. But I'd say her intonation was fine, her volume was fine, the speed at which she spoke was all fine. From a grammar standpoint, again, we'll quickly point out there's a couple attempts here at more complex structures, but I want you to notice that the vast majority of sentences included here are definitely short and simple. And as we've seen in other responses today, this woman relies exclusively on the word and to connect just about every idea together. So this is not yet demonstrating the variety or the complexity that we're looking for to achieve that level 9 or higher. From her content, so remember back to that picture, I'll point out that she makes up the name for her friend, which is great. His name is Ritu. She asks him how he's doing. That makes sense. When you call a friend, that's what you would probably say. Now, she makes it clear she's lost, but I want you to look at the vocab. I'm really not sure where I need to move. I think we know what she means. She's basically saying, I'm not sure which house is yours. But the wording, as you can see, is quite unnatural. We'll get to the wording in a minute. Content, though, it's clear. She's lost. She's called her friend. She's lost. She does ask him for directions. So she is sort of following the instructions of the whole piece. Again, look at the way she's asked. Is it the right place I am on, or do I need to take a different street? Not quite natural, but we understand she's asking for directions. So that's sort of the framework of the question, if you will. The coherence is there, and she does describe the scene in the middle, which is what we want to do. But I want you to note that a lot of these descriptions are either inaccurate altogether or very underdeveloped. The very first thing she says to her friend after saying she's lost and she's going to tell him where she is, the first item from that picture she describes is the board. And all she says is it's written SLOW. It's yellow, and we don't know what the wording is. We couldn't catch that word. So imagine you are Ritu on the telephone, and the very first thing your friend says is, or to you is, oh, I'm lost. I see this board with SLOW. And I ask, is that a really helpful detail to provide first when you're asking for directions? And I would say no. It is such a small, relatively unimportant detail when we don't even have the big picture yet. And the next detail she provides to us is the garbage bin. All she says is it's nearby. And the only detail we get is that the garbage bin is open. So yeah, that's accurate. I remember seeing that garbage bin that was open nearby the garage. But once again, there's probably, I don't know how many garbage bins in a city, whether it's open or closed. That's not a helpful detail to have Ritu direct this woman to his house. She finally gets to that townhouse, and this is the most important part of the entire description, but the only word she uses to describe it is that the townhouse is big. She doesn't say it's blue. She doesn't say there are homes on both sides of the road. So more detail is necessary. And she mentions, I guess, underneath that townhome, she says there's a parking lot, and this is not true. There's a parking garage, but there's definitely not a parking lot. So I think she got the wrong word choice. She correctly mentions trees, but they're not across the road. They're at the top of the hill. I think on both sides of the road, what she sees are bushes. So do you see what I mean? She's always close to sort of what the picture is showing us, but there are lots and lots of inaccuracies, and there are quite a few underdeveloped ideas too. So the content details, frankly, are quite weak in this particular response. Vocab is in the same vein. I mean, some of these words are accurate, sure, but you can see how simple they are. Open, big, trees, road. The vast majority of expressions within this response, even though we almost always know what she means, the wording is simply not natural. The syntax is off. Explain you a little bit, would be, can I explain to you where I'm standing, right? So just more development is needed here. So this would be a little bit of a lower ability level, I think, than what we've seen in other responses so far today. From a task fulfillment, though, hey, she calls her friend. Even though the response is a little underdeveloped and inaccurate in time, she does actually describe the surroundings to the best of her ability. And she does, in her own way, ask for directions. So she has technically followed all instructions from the test question. And this is a strength. She does speak for 60 seconds. She gets cut off at the end of her final sentence, but she was already finished the response. She had already asked for directions. So getting cut off there is probably not such a big deal. Her tone is very polite and she genuinely sounds excited. Like, hi, Ritu, how are you? Let me know if this is the right place. So she clearly wants to see her friend. So her tone would be absolutely appropriate for this particular task. So task fulfillment there has been done fairly well. What do you think? I think this will be an easy one for you to rate, but we'll see. Let me know what you think. Is this a level 8 or is this a level 9? And as always, you can see the little summary chart there on screen behind the poll on Zoom. Okay, I'll share with you the results in just a moment here. You've got about 10 more seconds if you still want to vote in the online Zoom poll. Okay, here is what you are saying. Only one person here thinks it's a level 9. Everybody else, 91%, are suggesting it's a level 8. And yes, this is a level 8. Definitely, definitely. There's simply not enough accuracy, development, or complexity in any of those 4 categories, really, to achieve that level 9 or higher. Level 8 is still a good score, remember? And if we looked back at that chart and picked a weakness from each part of it to develop and workshop, then there would be opportunities to advance. But for the time being, it's a level 8. Before we leave this question, I do want to share with you a level 12 response from a woman who obviously is answering the exact same question. We're not going to analyze this one in as much detail, but I'm going to play it for you. You will get the audio clip and the transcript in your study packs. But while you're listening, I'd like you to really notice that this level 12 speaker very accurately and precisely describes the scene. And not only that, she's giving very helpful transitions between the ideas to orient the listener. So these were the skills that were not done so accurately in the last response that earned level 8. So it will be a really nice comparison. So let's listen now and you'll see what I mean.
Hi Sam, okay, I think I found the street where you live, but I'm not sure which house you are. So where I'm standing, I can see I'm at the bottom of a hill, and I can see up a road heading into like a forest area. There are 3 houses that I can see immediately in front of me. There is one on the right hand side on its own, detached house, which has got a blue doorway and a red porch above it, and that's sort of just on the curve of the road. There's there's a speed hump near the path, and I can also see another 2 houses which are next to each other, which is on my left hand side. One has got a large patio window. There's also underground garage with a slow sign on top of it, and there's a red post box outside that one, and then there is a second house just behind it, and I can also see a garbage bin. Are you near that by any chance?
Okay, she actually was, I don't know what she was trying to say at the end. She got cut off, but luckily for her, she had just finished by asking for directions. So again, I won't go through this transcript in any great detail since we are focusing on level 9 today, not 12. But I thought it was just a very good way to compare the differences. Like our level 8 speaker, this level 12 speaker still gives the reason for her call and greets her friend and asks for directions. But again, it's a lot of the context-specific vocab that really makes a difference. And you see or hear phrases like immediately in front of me, and there's a detached house, and the curve of the road, and the patio window. So we didn't get any of that precise language, of course, from the level 8 speaker as well. There's one tiny little word choice error, and it's not a problem, but I like to show you mistakes in level 12 answers because there's this misconception that in order to achieve level 12, you have to be perfect. And I'm here to tell you that that is not true. Even in level 12, we sometimes see mistakes. And here's an example. She's describing the detached house. And she does mention there's a blue doorway. That's all fine. But she says there's a red porch above it. And when you get your study pack and go back to the picture, I want you to look at the red little semicircular design above the doorway. We don't refer to those items as a porch. A porch is sort of like a wooden walkway that you would see in front of the front door to a house. And quite often people will sit out on the porch to have a morning cup of coffee or something to that degree. So the word itself is incorrect. I'm not too sure what word she was aiming for. When you look at the picture, you can come up with your own idea. But again, it's one little tiny word choice mistake. And when you look at the precision of the rest of the answer, it's really not going to make much of a difference is the point. Anyway, let's finish up today. We have one more response to take a little look at here. This is a task 8 sample response. Again, different question though. So remember, you've got 30 seconds to get prepared, 60 seconds to speak. The question for this situation tells us that we are at a tourist site and we see these street performers. So think of them as musicians. So here's what we have to do, 3 steps. We have to call our friend Katya. The name is given, so we must call Katya. We will not be making up our own name in this case. So call Katya, that is so easy to do. Hey Katya, how are you today? Right, done. Describe in detail what these performers are doing. So this is going to be the majority of the response that you're speaking. And then you're going to ask Katya if she really wants to come see this event. So you're basically inviting Katya to join you at some point or another. So as we did for the last response, I think it's helpful to listen to this man's answer as we're looking at the picture. And that way you can decide for yourself if the descriptions are accurate and interesting. All right, I'll play it for you now and we'll take it from there.
Hi, Katya. Do you hear this music behind me? I'm in a park somewhere downtown. I don't know, basically. And these street performers are actually having a really good band. And the instruments are, of course, glasses filled to different volumes and a percussion set made of garbage cans or, buckets, plastic ones and metal ones. And it actually, you wouldn't believe it, sounds very good. I hope you can hear something, anything. They've been going at it for hours. We actually passed through here 3 hours ago and they were doing the same thing, and it is such a good soundtrack actually for the entire city, for a day in the city. It's great. Check them out. Probably there's a YouTube or something.
Okay, I love this man's answer, by the way. His pronunciation's fine and the speed and volume are fine. Again, some interjections, hesitations, but nothing too intrusive. They don't have a major effect on the rhythm. It's this man's intonation that sets this response apart in the listenability quadrant compared to the other responses we've heard today. So remember, he is supposed to invite Katya to join him at this little concert, we'll call it, in the park. And he genuinely sounds excited as he is describing the performers. And the invite, when he says, check it out, he honestly sounds like he's having such a great time. So this is definitely the right approach when you can use intonation in the voice to build that excitement for this scene. I think that's clever. And that would certainly help actually with the tone and with the task fulfillment part of his score. So here is his transcript and a real quick look here at his sentence structure and grammar, as we always have to do. There are a few attempts I'm underlining for you now in complex structures. So that's a good sign. But as we've seen before, there are also many sentences that are a little bit simple and short that I think could easily be connected to other ideas to make them compound or complex. And just like we've seen in other responses, the man does rely too heavily on that very basic word and. We've seen it so many times today that I hope when you practice at home, you're going to work in other words that are more interesting to show that variety that the rating team is hoping to hear from you to help your score. But from a content standpoint, sure, he calls Katya. We'll look at his descriptions. His first description is a little bit too vague. Yes, it's a park, but all he says is it's somewhere downtown. And remember, he's supposed to invite Katya to join him. And if he can't even tell her what park he's in, how on earth will Katya find him? So at the very least, we need the name of this park. If you noticed in the picture, I think there was a sign in the background on a tree that mentioned, I think it said Capilano Park, if I'm not mistaken. If you notice that, you could use that name. But honestly, if you just made up the name of any park, that would be totally fine. I live in Vancouver and Stanley Park is a really well-known park in this city. So that's what I would say. It's the first one that comes to my mind. But make one up or use a real name, doesn't matter. But he could have said, I'm in Stanley Park in Vancouver's West End. I mean, that would have been so much more precise. But apart from that weak opening, he does a fantastic job of describing the street performers as well as the instruments. So look at all of the unique details he's able to mention about those instruments, how we've got glasses, they've got different amounts or volumes of water, how we have a percussion set, not just drum set, but percussion set. There are garbage cans made of buckets or with buckets that are plastic and metal. So he really takes his time to build up this scene. And that would appeal to just about anyone that likes music, right? When you hear how unique this is. And to really cap it off, this is my favorite part of the response. The man says that this performance is a good soundtrack for the entire city. This is what we would refer to as a metaphor. He's comparing the beautiful music in the park to music that's strong enough to be sort of like a movie soundtrack that could capture the spirit of the city. And when you use language like that, clearly you are enjoying yourself. And that would also motivate Katya to come down and join him. So all of these content details have been done quite well. He also uses accurate vocab, lots of precision. We didn't see this type of precision in our level 8 response. Of course, we saw lots of great vocab in the level 12. And again, here in this particular response. I noticed as well that our speaker is able to also use these casual expressions. So the musicians have been going at it for hours, and check them out. Remember that this speaker is talking to his friend. And when we speak to a friend, it's acceptable to be casual, which is what these expressions are conveying. So he's got some nice varied vocabulary as well as a correct tone here to use. There definitely is room for improvement, though, with some of the vocab. We don't want to use words like somewhere and good, something, anything. He uses these words quite often throughout the response. So once again, I'll take you back. Lots of examples of interesting, precise words, but also room for development. It's a balancing act. So whenever you can replace the word something, somewhere, anything good, please do so. In the middle of the response, when he says, oh, it sounds very good, I hope you can hear something, anything, that doesn't give us any value in content, does it? Could we not just say, the music is amazing, I hope you can hear the drummers behind me now? Something like that isn't hard to come up with, but it definitely paints a more concrete picture in the mind. So that's the approach that we're hoping for. And I don't know if you realize this man has also repeated himself a little bit. He likes that word actually. So perhaps we could remove that word so that we don't have quite as much repetition. That might help a little bit too with the score. But from a task fulfillment standpoint, he definitely addresses all 3 parts of the instructions, which he has to. Calls his friend, does a fantastic job of describing the instruments and the music. And then he does issue the invite in his own words. Remember, his tone is extra exciting, right? So that's going to motivate Katya to join him. And he does speak for the full time, 60 seconds. So his task fulfillment would be quite strong. So this is going to be the last response that we'll do today. So make your vote count here. I've just launched our last poll of the day. Is this a level 8 or is this a level 9? Do you think? Based on everything we've learned today. We know by now that we have to take account of all 4 categories, not just one. We always have to look at both strengths and weaknesses and balance them. Just because there's a weakness doesn't mean it's a lower score. It depends on what the weakness is and how seriously it impacts the rest of the response, right? And I'm actually quite pleased to see your guesses here. 88% of you are going with level 9, and you would be absolutely correct. Yes, it's certainly not perfect. There were a few too many simple sentence structures for my own taste. But when I look at the big picture and I look at how cleverly he's describing the scene and again, his intonation and how much he wants Katya to join him, I can see that a lot of these extra touches, these strengths are making up for some of those weaknesses that we saw. Anyway, wrapping up for task 8, remember you are doing a role play for this particular task. Please set it up as such. If the name is given to you in the test instructions, use it. Like this one, we just talked about Katya. If there's no name, make that name up. I think we had a Ritu, we had a Sam. You should have a name. A name is an easy detail, and it makes the response personalized. So for task 8, you're going to pick and choose the most important and unique aspects of the image. Please try to use descriptive vocabulary that is accurate. You want your listener to be able to imagine the scene you are describing. And remember, there will be an extra step to finish the phone call. In this last example with the musicians, it was to invite Katya to join you. In that first example where we were lost looking for directions, it was exactly that. We had to ask our friend for directions to his home at some point. So don't forget that final step. Otherwise, your response won't be quite as complete as we would like it for task fulfillment. Anyway, that takes us to the end of the content of this webinar. I'm going to take just a couple minutes more to run over some study material ideas. So this would be a great time for you to ask any outstanding questions you might have about the test in the Zoom chat box before we log out. So I'll start by reminding you that we have a partnership with the National Bank of Canada. So if you are relatively new to Canada and you are indeed looking to open a bank account, you can do so through our website, through the CELPIP website. Follow the links. And if you do open a bank account with the National Bank, they will give you $300 cash back. And that basically covers the cost of your CELPIP test if that's how you choose to use that money. So I mentioned that, as I say, it might apply to some of you here today. I think we talked briefly at the beginning of the session today about why you would take CELPIP. And of course, it's for immigration and other purposes, but you can also take it for your postgraduate work permit applications. I wanted to remind you of that in case it applied to you. And we do have 9 webinars total that we deliver on Zoom fairly regularly. They're each 2 hours long, like today's session. They're all taught by a CELPIP certified instructor like myself. You can ask questions, of course, in the Zoom chat box. So it's a great way to have that personalized attention as we go through these sessions. You can register for these sessions right up on the website. And all of these links I'm showing you right now, by the way, on my slides, you're going to receive all of these links in the study pack. And I see in our Zoom chat box right now, my colleague Simon has just posted the study pack into the Zoom chat. So if you're able to click on that link right now and download it to your computer, that would be great. If you can't do that or don't know how to do that, you can maybe just wait for the email to arrive. We will also be emailing you the study pack. Note in the email, though, the links are not clickable, but the study pack link that we shared with you in Zoom is. So it just makes it easier for you to navigate to these parts of the website. There's a YouTube channel, and this is where we keep all of our recordings, by the way, of webinars and of our CELPIP live show. So if you want free instructional episodes, check this channel out. CELPIP Official is the name. Our CELPIP Live series has about 140 instructional episodes posted to date, and we're still going strong. We deliver the show to you every second Thursday at 9:30 in the morning Pacific time. There's a study tip series. There's lots to see on YouTube, so check that out. It's all free. And if you enjoyed analyzing the speaking responses to see strengths and weaknesses in different people's answers, you can find more speaking and writing responses from real test takers by visiting the CELPIP website. You see at the very, very top, those four menu options. It's the second one that says prepare for CELPIP. When you click on the score comparison chart and you scroll down, you're going to come across a couple of different tabs to navigate between. So you can decide if you want to work on speaking or writing by clicking here. So we're focusing on speaking today. And then right below that, you're going to see 3 other tabs. Level descriptors identify the areas that you'll be scored upon. You can actually view sample responses and get the response analysis pieces like what we were doing today for each of these responses. So you get to decide what level you're studying. Maybe for you, it's level 10, just as an example. So you'll be able to see what a level 10 speaker or writer should be able to demonstrate. Clicking sample responses gives you a test question to review, and then you'll be able to listen to 2 recorded responses in speaking or read over the written responses. And then when you click response analysis, it'll be an in-depth discussion about the strengths and weaknesses in those areas, which is what we were doing today. So it allows you to understand why these people earned the score they did. So whatever score you want, I encourage you to check out all of the responses available. It's a free material right on the CELPIP website. There's also a podcast. It's just simply called the Official CELPIP Podcast. You can find it on the blog section of the CELPIP website or simply download it from any platform where you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, there are 2 free practice tests that you can find right again on the CELPIP website. You'll have these links available in the study pack. And when you've exhausted the free materials, we encourage you to visit the online bookstore where we sell additional practice tests and study guides and online courses and so on. So you're looking right now at a list of regular prices, and we do have 50% off prices from time to time. So you can keep an eye out for that if you're looking to save some money. And the last free item I'll mention is that the moment you register for your CELPIP test, you're going to be given a little bit of time to explore the Accelerate program. Now, Accelerate is an online course that is going to help you in reading and writing. That's one course, or listening and speaking is a separate course. So you don't get to try the entire course, but you'll be given 5 hours of free access if you have registered for the CELPIP General Test, or 2.5 hours of free access if you are registering for the General LS Test. So if you like the course well enough, you can certainly purchase the entire course from the online bookstore. And I will mention too, if you've got a little bit of money to invest in your language skills development, I encourage you to check out the listing of all of our network providers right on the website. Again, the link will be clickable in the study pack. There are many institutions across the world. It's not just in Canada, it's also internationally. So these schools and institutions have certified their own teachers for the CELPIP test. So we'll call these teachers CELPIP experts, and they deliver curriculum that is going to help you with listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So take a CELPIP prep program if it appeals to you. Some of these schools will offer online options and some will be in person. But these schools themselves will set their own schedule and their own prices. So as a first step, you might just want to see what's around, what's nearby, and what's suitable for you. Be advised, of course, these are not free courses. They do take a little bit of money. So it's something to consider. And last but not least, someday, if you do decide that you'd like to study at a Canadian university or college, chances are you would need an academic language proficiency score to demonstrate to the school that you're ready to study there. And Prometric, which is the company that delivers CELPIP to you, also has an academic test called the CALE. So you can visit the CALE website to find out more and know that you can take this test from your home computer if you live in one of these 13 countries here listed on screen. Okay, and that's pretty much it for us. I've got here the customer service email at the top, your bookstore website, and links to all the social media platforms. Again, all of these links are clickable in the study pack. If you were not able to access the study pack that Simon posted in the Zoom chat, we will be emailing you within, I always say, the next 24 hours, so very soon. And you'll be able to copy and paste the links there to your computer. All right, a reminder that we still go live on YouTube every second Thursday, 9:30 in the morning Pacific time. And Instagram, we go live on a semi-regular basis, but there's no set schedule. The schedule depends on time zone differences and who our guests are when we go live. But I suppose if you are subscribed to the Instagram channel, you should know when the next upcoming lesson is going to be and what it will be about. So I'll leave that with you for now. And thank you very much for joining us today. It looks like we've answered all the questions now into the Zoom chat. So we will wish you a pleasant day ahead and just hopefully we'll see you back for the next session. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.